And welcome to the BBC's News at 6. The alarming scale of Britain's economic crisis was revealed today when the Chancellor, Alistair Darling, delivered his budget. He admitted that his own predictions on the shrinking economy made just a few months ago were already out of date. Over the next few years, Mr Darling will be forced to borrow more than any British Chancellor since the war. To pay it back, there'll be a squeeze on public spending and rises in taxes. Some high earners will see their top tax rate go from 40 to 50% next April. For the Tories, Mr Cameron accused Labour of presiding over a decade of debt. Laura Kuenssberg now on a budget like no other.
Grin and bear it. A smile from the Chancellor with the most grim economic news in decades. Alistair Darling's budget box held a toxic mix of truths. This year, borrowing will reach £175 billion, way more than ever before. The economy will shrink by 3.5%, the worst recession since the Second World War, and no chance of balancing the UK's books for nearly another decade. All that is miles away from predictions the Chancellor made, his last forecasts in Parliament hopelessly out of date.
This budget will build on the strengths of the British economy and its people, speed the recovery, providing jobs and spreading prosperity. And in all of these decisions, we've been guided by our core values of fairness and opportunity and our determination to invest and grow our way out of recession.
But there was no hiding it on ministers' faces. Once it started, the bad news kept coming.
And my forecast for GDP growth for the year as a whole will be minus 3.5%, in line with other independent forecasts. Our own figures for public sector net borrowing will be £175 billion this year, or some 12% of GDP. UK net debt, which includes the cost of stabilising the banking system, will, as a share of GDP, increase from 59% this year to 68% next, then 74% in 2011-12.
To start to fill the hole in the devastated public finances, a surprise tax hike.
In November, I announced a new rate of income tax of 45% on incomes above £150,000. That's the top 1% of taxpayers. In order to help pay for additional support for people now and to invest in the future, I've decided that the new rate will be 50% and will come in from April next year, a year earlier.
With that, Mr Darling broke a Labour promise not to raise income tax, made by Tony Blair and Gordon Brown in 2005. But the Chancellor will pull in more this year from other changes that will hit many more pockets. Drivers will pay 2 pence more at the pump. Drinkers will pay a penny more for a pint, 4 pence on a bottle of wine. And every packet of cigarettes will cost 7 pence more. And there'll be a tight squeeze on public spending. The terrible figures gave plenty of fodder for the opposition.
This Prime Minister has certainly got himself in the history books. He has written a whole chapter in red ink, Labour's decade of debt.
David Cameron attacking Labour's entire economic record.
As of today, any claim they have ever made to economic competence is dead, over, finished.
The Chancellor's belief that the economy will pick up this year was described as fantasy by the Liberal Democrats.
The worst of times demands the best of budgets. So what did we get today? Today we got a mishmash of recycled announcements from a government skilled in raising false hopes but incompetent in delivering practical help.
Parliament may have been well protected today, but the government can't keep criticism away.
We've got a mountain of debt. We're going to add £700 billion of new debt over the next 5 years. That's £12,000 for every man, woman and child. And we're going to have nothing to show for it.
This isn't just about the Chancellor confessing to Westminster just how bad things really are. But it's about whether voters will trust Gordon Brown with the economy. Now his old mantra has been proved so wrong.
We will not return to the old boom and bust. No longer the boom-bust economy. No return to boom and bust.
Not so, Prime Minister. And if the Chancellor can't manage the poisonous mix of economic news, it could be his boss who will pay the ultimate political price. Laura Kuenssberg, BBC News, Westminster.
So here's a brief summary of what the Chancellor had to say about some of those traditional budget targets. The price of a packet of 20 cigarettes has gone up by 12p. A litre of fuel will cost 2p more from September, and there'll be an above-inflation rise in duty for the next 4 years. And as we already knew, from midnight the price of a pint of beer will go up by an average of 3 pence. Well, as we've been hearing, government borrowing and debt are to